Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I was 44 the night my daughter bowed to a room full of strangers and looked for her mother in the dark. You could feel the search in her eyes, a small sweep across the back rows where parents hide behind phones and pride. She didn't find what she was looking for, and she swallowed it like a note that doesn't fit the piece. My name is Henry. I load trucks at dawn, fix lawn equipment in the afternoons, and shelve boxes at the big box store on weekends. 3 jobs that pay the same kind of money but wear a man out in different ways. For the last year I've worked them all because my daughter, Grace, can make a piano talk. It started as a hobby, sticky C keys on an old upright my neighbor was giving away, and turned into a life we organized around scales and scholarships and a stern woman named Miss Talbot who ran a music school in a storefront between a bail bonds office and a taco place that never closes. Miss Talbot doesn't smile unless you earn it. Grace earned it the second week when she sight read a piece and played it like she'd met the composer in a dream. She's got the ear, Miss Talbot told me privately, the way people tell you your kid is good at basketball or algebra or making a room feel kinder. The ear is rarer than the fingers. We can train the fingers. We can only honor the ear. Honoring the ear meant money and time we didn't have. I picked up overtime. I set my phone alarm for 2 a.m. to check bank balances and transfer $20 here and there like buckets catching leaks in a hurricane. I learned the names of pieces, not because I needed to but because Grace wanted a person at the dinner table who knew what she meant when she said, "The left hand in the Chopin Nocturne is like a tide you have to respect." Laura is my wife. She's 38 and used to make dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays and hated when people clapped at the end of movies. She works in marketing, she says in brand, but I don't know how to say that out loud without feeling ridiculous. We met in college when I was a campus electrician and she was a communications major with a highlighter in 3 colors. We married at 24 because it felt like we were outrunning something and also running toward something, and for a long time I couldn't tell the difference. In the weeks before the recital, our house sounded like scales and metronomes and the 3 of us negotiating space. Grace practiced. I packed lunches. Laura took calls in the bedroom with the door closed. We argued about the arguments all couples have in their 14th year, who's tired, who's not paying attention, whose job deserves more grace. There's nothing unique about any of it. The unique part was the kid who made the piano in the living room sound like a chapel. The recital was a Saturday in May. The programs had typos. Bach Prelude in C major was Bach Prelude, which made over-prepared parents gasp and under-prepared ones smirk. Miss Talbot wore a dress the color of a bruise and shoes that looked like they hurt in a way she enjoyed. Grace's name was 4th from the end. Headliners go 8, she said with a wink I recognized as borrowed from me. I sat with my hands on my knees and tried not to stare at my phone like a man waiting for a call from the lab. Laura had told us on Thursday she had to fly to Atlanta for a client pitch. It's a big account, she said, eyes on her laptop. They moved the meeting to Saturday. I begged. They said no. You can beg again, I said, because Grace heard everything and you can't whisper a hurricane. Henry, Laura said, I've rescheduled twice. They're making decisions. Our quarter is, she stopped because she knows her words are stickers and I can see the adhesive. Grace said it was okay. 13-year-olds have PhDs in okay. It's fine, she said, it's only a recital. As if a year of Tuesdays and Thursdays could be measured in the word only. We kissed her forehead and told her she was brave. She practiced brave in the mirror like it was part of the piece. Miss Talbot opened the recital like a judge opening court. She thanked donors who keep a school like hers alive, men and women who write checks and like their names printed on programs in Times New Roman. The younger kids went first. They played pieces with names like The Waterfall and lifted their wrists at the end the way Miss Talbot must have taught them in a group lesson. We clapped as if clapping could glue a room together. Grace was called at 3:17. She wore a navy dress we bought at a consignment shop because the universe understands we are not a Nordstrom family. She had a silver hair clip that used to be her grandmother's and a necklace with a clef at Lily, our niece, made out of wire. She walked to the piano like she'd been doing it for a lifetime. She bowed slightly, sat, adjusted the bench, placed her fingers in the air above the keys as if the opening measure was a bird she didn't want to startle, and then began. I can't tell you the right words to describe her playing because the words I know are the words that fix engines and argue with bills. I can tell you that people breathed at the same time in the middle and a woman 2 rows ahead dabbed her eyes and tried not to make a sound. Grace played the last bars of the Chopin with a softness that made the room lean closer, and when the final note left the soundboard, there was a hollow silence so perfect I wanted to trap it in a jar and save it for the days we would need proof we made something beautiful. We clapped. We stood. She bowed. She looked for her mother. I felt the weight of what wasn't there like a hand on my neck. Afterward, parents circled like bees. Grace said thank you and yes, I'll keep practicing, and no, I didn't think I'd get it right either to questions nobody was really asking. Miss Talbot squeezed my arm so hard it hurt. Scholarship auditions in August, she said. We'll talk. The ear, Henry. That ear. I was putting away the program, folding it into a rectangle small enough to live in my wallet, when my phone buzzed. Family card app. I installed it the year we forgot to pay the internet one time and Grace pretended she wasn't embarrassed when the router went dark. The alert looked different than usual. Gold icon. Authorization complete, Blue Heron Spa Resort. $842.67. I stared at the screen the way you stare when you think maybe your brain has decided to play a joke you can't afford. The Blue Heron is an hour outside the city, near a lake where people with 2 cars and 1 career go to remember they are supposed to be happy. I drove past it once with Grace when we were looking for a used keyboard someone on Marketplace swore was like new and turned out to be a relic from a thrift store that gave up on instruments in the 90s. We'll go there someday, Grace said, pointing from the passenger seat, when I play at Carnegie Hall and you're too proud to speak. I showed her the phone now, half out of reflex, half out of a desire to be wrong in front of a witness. She looked at it, looked at me, and said, "Mom's in Atlanta," without finishing the sentence. The woman at the front desk of the Blue Heron knew who I was before I said anything. That's how you know a place is expensive, they call you sir because they'd like you to become a regular. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and money laundering. There were couches in shapes that made you reconsider your posture. There was a bowl of water with floating lemons on a table, which is a thing rich people do when they want you to know they have time to place fruit in liquids. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to see my wife," I said, and said Laura's name, and then, because I didn't want to be there, added, "Our card was charged and I want to confirm." She nodded before I finished. "She just checked in," she said. "She's in the spa wing. Would you like me to call the room?" "I'd like you to tell me the room," I said, and then, because I am not a monster and because I've seen men use front desk clerks as punching bags for their panic, I said, "Please." She gave me the number. I walked down a hall lined with apologetic art and rugs that make your steps quiet. Outside the door I heard a laugh I knew before I knew my own name. It came with another laugh I didn't know, the kind of laugh people practice when they want to sound carefree. I knocked. There are 2 knocks a person learns in long marriages, the one that says "I'm home" and the one that says "I know." I used the second. Laura opened the door in a robe that wasn't ours. Behind her a man adjusted the belt on a matching robe and tried to shrink. He was my age give or take, well moisturized, the kind of man who calls a bartender by name and never tips like it matters. The room smelled like shampoo that promises happiness. "Henry," Laura said, and her mouth tried on 3 lies before she picked one. This isn't what it looks like." "It looks like $800, I said, because I couldn't think of anything else that wouldn't rip the wallpaper. "Let's go downstairs," she said, and tied her robe tighter, which made something in me laugh in a way I didn't recognize. "Let's not make a scene." "We don't have to make a scene," I said. "We can live it in a normal tone of voice." The man stepped forward. I didn't look at him. If I looked at him I would make a different kind of mistake. "I'll wait downstairs," I told Laura. "Put on something that's not a costume. We'll talk." I sat in a chair near the lemon bowl like a man waiting for a dentist with a bad reputation. Grace texted, "Are you coming home?" I wrote back, "Soon." "Where are you?" She wrote, "At Miss T's." She made tea. She said to tell you I did the best of the best of the best. I wrote, "You did." Then, because my hands wanted to build something and the only materials available were words, I added, We will be okay. It was both true and aspirational. Laura came down 10 minutes later in jeans and a t-shirt that said her company's name in a font I can't take seriously. "Let's sit outside," she said. We found a bench near a fountain that made the sound of money trying to be humble. She looked at her hands and then at the path like she was late for a different conversation. "I didn't want to do this here," she said. "I didn't want to do this at all." "You missed your daughter's recital," I said. "You wanted to do that." "I told you." "You told me you had a pitch," I said. Which is a word that covers sins the way a sheet covers a body. She flinched. "Don't be poetic, Henry. It's not your thing." "You're right," I said. "My thing is loading trucks and changing oil and working a register while a man with a credit card his dad pays for tells me which aisle the fishing line is on. And being at my kid's piano recital. That's my thing." She looked like a person who hadn't realized sarcasm has an age limit. "I'm unhappy," she said, and leaned on the words like they were a fact and not a preface. "So am I," I said. "Right now. Deeply. But that's not the sentence you mean." "I have been unhappy for years," she said, carefully now. "You don't look at me. You look at Grace and you look at bills and you look at job listings and carburetors and—" "You wanted me to look at you while I was clocking out of 2 jobs and trying to afford Chopin?" I said. "I looked at you. You were turned away." She said his name then because there's a point where hiding makes you feel smaller than saying the wrong thing out loud. It did not matter. Names don't matter in rooms like this. They're just the labels you'll be erasing later. "I'll call my parents," she said finally, as if that was a solution and not an alarm. "You should," I said. "We're having a family meeting." We held it the next day in our parents' living room, a place where nothing is allowed to be out of place and the couch has pillows you have to move to sit down. Her mother, Marianne, arranged the pillows while we waited like rearranging cloth could comb the day. Her father, Leonard, sat in his chair, a man whose silence always contained answers if you were patient. Grace came with Miss Talbot's tea in a thermos, like she'd been packing for a journey. She didn't sit next to her mother. She sat on the piano bench because everything about this season of our life was happening next to a keyboard. Marianne started before anyone else could. "Henry," she said, voice sliding into the kind of tone reserved for neighbors who let their grass grow too long, "you have to understand your part in this. Laura's been miserable. She told me. You've been hard. You work all the time. You make her feel like a ghost in her own home." "That's quite a sentence," Leonard said, not looking at her. "It's the truth," Marianne shot back. "And I won't let you all pile on Laura like she's the only sinner in the world. She's a good mother. She's just unhappy." Grace, who is 13 and doesn't like being the center of adult theater, spoke before I could. "A good mother shows up," she said, not loud, not mean. Just a fact placed in the middle of the table. "He worked 3 jobs and he showed up. I played the Chopin Nocturne and looked for you and you were at a spa." Laura closed her eyes. "Grace," she said, and reached her hand out in a gesture so practiced it looked like TV. "No," Grace said, taking a step back. "You don't get to touch me with that hand right now." Marianne stood like a referee who thinks standing is the same as authority. "That is your mother," she said, pointing, as if we'd gotten the roles confused. "You apologize." Leonard stood, too, but slower, as if gravity was a rule he could choose to obey at his own pace. "Marianne," he said, and the whole room changed temperature. He turned to Laura. "I'm not going to shout," he said. "It doesn't get us anywhere. But I'm going to say this plain, I support Henry. I support Grace. I would support you if you had brought us the truth and not a receipt." Marianne made a sound like a kettle about to boil. "Leonard." "I'm talking," he said, without raising his voice. "You told me last night she was miserable. You used that word like a pardon. Maybe she was. Maybe she is. But misery is not a hall pass." He looked at Laura with a softness I recognized from the way he used to tie her shoes when she was 5. "You hurt them," he said. "You picked the worst day to do it. You made a choice and now you want the world to be kinder than your choice. I want that too, because I love you. But I won't pretend the piano wasn't empty where you were supposed to be." Marianne opened her mouth to launch a second wave and Leonard did something I've never seen him do. He took her hand and squeezed it hard enough to make her look at him. "Don't," he said. "Not this time. We've coddled the wrong things long enough." Laura started to cry, the profile of a person whose therapist will someday tell her to let a feeling finish. "I don't know how to fix it," she said. "You start by not making it worse," Leonard said. He turned to me. "What are you going to do?" I realized then that people think decisions are thunderclaps and they're not. They're a gathering of small sounds. Grace's breathing on the bench. The refrigerator motor. The way Laura's robe belt had scraped the door yesterday because she'd pulled too hard. The lemon slices bobbing in a bowl. "I'm filing for primary custody," I said, voice steady because the sentence had been building in me since the gold icon on my phone. "Grace wants to live with me. She'll see Laura on a schedule. We'll sort it through the court, because feelings have already made enough of a mess." Marianne scoffed. "You can't." Leonard cut her off. "He can," he said. "And he will. And we will help. Grace can stay with us when Henry works nights. We'll do rides. We'll come to every single thing that doesn't end in a spa." Grace looked at her grandfather like she was being handed a life jacket and a map. "I want to live with Dad," she said, turning to Laura. "You can come to my next recital. You can come to all of them. But I'm living with Dad." Laura nodded, slowly, eyes on the carpet, a pattern so busy it makes you dizzy if you look at it too long. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." We went to court 3 weeks later. Family court is fluorescent and carpet and forms that make you fill out the same information 3 times because the system believes repetition equals truth. The judge was a woman with hair the color of iron and a voice that didn't try to sound like anything it wasn't. Grace spoke because she wanted to, not because she had to. She told the judge what she told all of us: he was at every concert. She wasn't at the one that mattered most so far. She didn't say spa. She didn't say lover. She didn't have to. The judge looked at me and then at Laura and then at Grace and wrote something on a pad. "I'm granting primary physical custody to Mr. Reed," she said. "Ms. Reed will have visitation per the schedule, increasing as appropriate. I expect both of you to honor Grace's relationship with the other parent and to appear at future events as invited." She paused. "Grace, I hope to see you at the symphony someday." Grace smiled, the kind of smile that will look good in a yearbook photo 20 years from now. "Me too," she said. After court, Marianne refused to look at me. She hugged Grace too hard and stared over her shoulder like the hug was a performance for a camera nobody else could see. Leonard shook my hand in the hallway and then pulled me into the kind of half-hug men do when their hearts are smarter than their habits. "We've got you," he said into my shoulder. "We've got her." Life after a gavel is a list. I switched my lawn equipment clients to mornings. I stacked my shelving shifts on weeknights so I could be at Saturday recitals and Sunday rehearsals. Leonard and I made a calendar that lived on our fridge and on his, 2 copies of a promise. Marianne became the grandparent who bakes, and who, to her credit, stopped making Laura's choices an excuse for everybody else's. She brings over cookies and asks about scales and takes Grace shoe shopping for concert flats as if she's been doing it all her life. Shame can be productive if you harness it right. Laura saw Grace twice a week, at first in the park and then at coffee shops and then in our living room when everyone calmed down enough to stop talking about carpets. She came to the next recital. She sat in the middle, not the back. She clapped before anyone else because she couldn't help herself. Grace bowed. She didn't look around this time. She looked straight ahead like the stage had become home. Miss Talbot pushed Grace harder. "You want scholarship?" she said, tapping a pencil against a metronome like she was warding off demons. "Then we treat this like a job. Artistry and discipline are not enemies. They are married and they have taxes." Grace nodded like a person who has found her language. She practiced in the morning and at night, and on days when I thought she'd be tired she'd surprise me with the speed of her scales and the patience of her left hand. Sometimes, late, after a shift that made my back feel like a pile of lumber, I'd sit in the doorway of her room and watch her sleep and think of the blue heron and feel a flash of something like revenge and then let it go. Revenge is a hobby for people who have time. Pride is a better one. Pride you can hold in your hands like a program with your kid's name spelled right. Laura started therapy. She told me because it was relevant to the schedule and because she's trying. She sent me a link to an article about how divorce doesn't have to be a war if you both decide to be grown-ups. I didn't click it because the headline told me everything I needed to know. Sometimes the lesson is in the title. Leonard started showing up at our house on Thursdays with takeout. "I have a pension," he said. "It's not a fortune, but it's enough to buy dumplings and soup." We ate at the table like people on a sitcom, Grace telling us about a measure she finally mastered, me telling them about a man at the store who argued with me about the price of air filters like he was defending his honor, Leonard telling a story about how Marianne used to skip church to read alone in a library and how that was something he loved about her that he forgot to love when life got loud. Marianne came around in smaller, better ways. She stopped defending Laura as if motherhood were a religion with rules we'd written to hurt her. She started defending Grace's schedule like a lawyer. "No," she told a cousin who wanted to plan a brunch during lesson time, "she has work." She said it with a kind of pride that made me see the girl she must have been, a girl who needed someone to say the same thing about her and didn't get it. She sits with Grace while she practices sometimes and turns pages and doesn't correct, and I've learned that the best changes in people are often the quiet ones. And Grace? She grew taller. She learned to double knot her recital shoes and carry herself without asking permission from the air. She jokes with Miss Talbot now. She says things like, "I think the Schubert is over-explaining," and Miss Talbot pretends to be offended. She plays funerals sometimes, which is a thing kids at her school do to make money and make churches proud. She plays Claire de Lune in a way that would make a diner cook stop mid-egg flip and look up. The thing I didn't expect was the way the house started to sound different. The metronome clicked like a heart you can trust. The kettle made a small content sound when it boiled. The door opened at predictable times and the couch stayed a couch instead of a place where someone would sit and say the kind of sentence that changes everything. I'm not a saint. There are moments when I think about the robe belt and the fountain and the lemons and I want to buy all the lemons in the store and dump them into our sink and stare at them until the stupid meaning drains out. But mostly I think about the day Grace will audition in a room with judges who have heard kids like her their whole lives and she'll sit down and play and the year will be the same, and my job will be what it has always been, to keep showing up, to clap at the right time, to make sure we have gas and groceries and a decent suit for me that doesn't smell like oil. One night in August, after a long day of moving other people's furniture, I came home to find Grace at the piano and Leonard in the chair by the window and Marianne at the stove warming soup she'd brought over. Laura was there too, on the couch, eyes red but steady. Grace finished a piece and turned. "Again?" she asked. "Again," we said, 4 voices in a house that had learned a new harmony. She played. The room didn't need to look for anyone in the dark. Everyone was where they said they'd be. When the last note hung in the air, nobody rushed to fill the silence. We let it be. We honored the ear. We honored the work. We made the kind of quiet that holds. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.